Coming up on episode 121 of the Behind the Back podcast, this is a Kings college basketball episode. Keeping it basketball today. We talk about the Sacramento Kings, who finally broke a historic franchise losing streak. We finally broke it. So we break down, what's been going on in Sacramento, but we also do a lottery simulator, figure out, talk about some of these draft prospects as we inch closer and closer to March Madness. And, we go over some of our favorite prospects. So with that being said, y'all, let's get it. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your hosts. I am Marcos Conan-Negron, and beside me here, as always, is Ben, the Jet Rets. Ben, it's been a minute. How are you, brother? How you been?
No complaints, man. I'm hanging in there. I'm dealing with some wisdom tooth pain right now, so that's a little bit of a bummer. But I've got a surgery scheduled. I haven't even told you about it yet. So I've got my surgery scheduled. I'm gonna get those bad boys out, and eventually I'll be on the up and ups. But I'm hanging in there, hoping that Kings basketball is keeping me alive, but it's struggling to do that.
Well, you got to make sure you send me the post-op video. We gotta get the clips for the pod here, for the aftermath. So when's your thing?
March 19th is when it is. So it's like a Thursday. And yeah, Daniela's going to be taking that day off. She's taking a half day that Thursday and then the Friday off. So she's going to be my caretaker. Love her to death. Shout out Danny. And yeah, she's going to get that video for sure. Like my post anesthesia when I'm waking up. My brother was a goofball. My sister was crying. Like I'm going to have a story of my own. So it'll be great. You'll probably see it.
Heck yeah, I can't wait for it. That's great. So good luck to you on that. I know it's going to suck. It's not going to be a fun experience. But hey, we all have to go through that at one point or another. Just like what we have to go through with the Sacramento Kings, it feels like each and every year at one point or another is just disappointment. But there is supposedly, potentially, a light at the end of the tunnel here. So because the Sacramento Kings, who just lost to the Houston Rockets today, but ended their 16-game franchise record 16-game losing streak the other night against Memphis. So the losing streak begins again. We are now one step closer to the draft night, and March Madness is very fast approaching, and it's going to be a lot of draft talk, a lot of prospect talks in what seems to be one of the most loaded draft classes in almost NBA history with the way they're talking about it. So what we're going to do, like we said, we were going to do each and every pod up until the draft or until the lottery results are in. We're going to do a lottery sim and see where the Sacramento Kings end up in this exercise. And then we're going to say, depending on whatever pick they get, is where we're going to talk about who we would want in this scenario. And this will lead into our Kings conversation and so much more. So stay with us, guys. This is going to be a fun time. So let's get this pulled up. All right, so we got the lottery sim here pulled up. We're going to press the button here and start the convo. Oh, would you look at that? The Utah Jazz get the number 1 overall pick. This is definitely rigged and scripted for sure. But then Washington gets second, and the Sacramento Kings fall to third. And Dallas is fourth, Indiana fifth in this scenario. So for the Sacramento Kings, we are now in the 3rd overall pick, Ben. So we talked about this last time with the team. With the draft prospects that we had, and the consensus top 5 has kind of stayed the same. And last time we spoke, it was AJ Dybansta Darryn Peterson, Cam Boozer, Caleb Wilson, and Kingston Flemings. Those were, in any which way or the other, those were the top 5 that were being discussed. And it still kind of is that same way. You can insert like Keaton Wagler, Michael Brown into the conversation. But at 3, who would you feel the most confident that we're getting, or who would you want in this situation? Do you think it would be AJ and Darren that go 1-2, leaving us with the rest of the other guys? Or do you think maybe Cam sneaks into the top 2 and we're left with an AJ or a Darren? What do you think?
I think based on kind of how, for instance, it was the Jazz who were number 1. Mm-hmm. They'd probably take Darren, right? Washington was number 2. So like they're probably going to take the best 2 available players, I would imagine. Washington's an interesting one because, yeah, I wonder with their guard situation, they would probably end up taking Boozer. That might leave us with AJ.
Or Darren.
Unless Utah decides AJ is the better option than Darren, depending. Like that's kind of the boat we're in. So let's just say for theoretics that Washington takes Cam Boozer at number 2.
Yeah.
For team building aspect. That would leave us with either AJ or Darren. And I think between those 2 guys, based on how things have gone recently with things being said and looking at some things and kind of attitudes and so on, I'd be more inclined to take AJ. I think from a ceiling standpoint, like it's hard to really know a player's ceiling, right? You're always just kind of guessing. But based on kind of the projections between the 2 players, they have a similar ceiling. It's kind of the floor is the reason why I think the consensus right now is that Darren is kind of the number 1 choice in this draft. So from that standpoint, I wouldn't be like super opposed at all to taking AJ Dybansta at number 3, because I feel like from a team building standpoint, you're getting your potential franchise player at that point. Like there's a lot of things that I like about AJ's game that just makes a lot of sense for this Kings team.
I think if it was that choice between AJ or Darren in this instance, I would also pick AJ. I do think, especially now recently, if we want to do recency bias, I mean, he has been the better player. And like you said, there's been a lot of stuff going on. We talked about it previously. Everyone knows about it with Darren, subbing himself out of games, trying to fight this narrative that he doesn't want to play, things like that. And whether or not that'd be good for a team like the Sacramento Kings, right? So let me throw you this question real quick. Let's say, we talked about whether it was Darren or AJ. We both would want AJ, but let's say the Jazz in this scenario take AJ. And that leaves us with Darren, Caleb Wilson, Kingston Flemings, or whoever our choice would be at 3. Would you take Darren in this scenario, despite all we've heard about Darren and who he might be? Not that the player seems undeniable, like who he is as a player. He's super smooth, one of a kind in terms of his skill, and he just seems like the most polished player in this draft class. But then we've talked about a guy like Caleb Wilson before, who seems like this high ceiling, he's got the size that you're looking for, especially something that we haven't had. And he seems to have like different intangibles to him, things like that. Would hearing everything that you've heard about Darren so far and the narratives that have kind of been spun around him, does the skill outweigh what's been talked about him? Or would you, if we were in that 3rd pick and left with Darren / the rest, would you take the shot at someone like Caleb?
It's hard right now, and the reason I say it is like I'm kind of battling with that in my head. I go back years ago when Jeff Petrie was doing scouting for the Sacramento Kings and was heavily involved, and his motto was take the best available player. And it worked really well when that was going on then. And those teams were decent and better than decent. Those were the glory days, damn it. But, I believe heavily in you take the best available player. You have to factor at this point, you have to factor in attitude and that has to matter at this point. You've seen enough times in all sports, especially in basketball, like you've seen guys get drafted to teams. They don't have a mindset of wanting to rebuild necessarily when they get in there. They believe their role should be one thing, but the rebuilding team believes it should be another. There's a whole bunch of things. And then you have different characters, not to compare Darren to say like a Ja Morant, but like there are characters like that throughout the NBA where we've seen these things go bad and it looks like a regrettable pick. Do I think that's going to happen with Darren? I don't know. But I'm going to tell you one thing, like drafting him, knowing all this, and putting him on a team that already has a ton of dysfunction in the front office that you're trying to get around and through, it just doesn't sound like a great mix. So I'm worried about that. Now, Caleb Wilson, from the two-way aspect, the two-way potential that he's got, is 6'10", big. Like this dude does it all for UNC in a lot of ways. And he's got franchise player written on him. At the very least, he's a very dependable role player and a big future in the NBA. That you can pretty much say about the top 5 players in this draft. Yeah. So the same could be said about Darryn. I'm really just at a tear right now, and I kind of want to toss it back to you without having answered the question, because for me, it's difficult to make that decision because I believe so heavily in that take the best available player. And the best available player would be Darryn Peterson at that point. But if you're building a culture, if you're building something where you're like, you want good attitudes in the building, you want two-way player, Darryn Peterson isn't a better defender than Caleb Wilson is. So it's like these things matter when you're trying to build a team. So I'm going to toss this back over to you and see if you have kind of an opinion on this.
It may feel like a hot take, but I think I would take Caleb for the sake of, I don't know if we drafted Darryn Peterson with the roster we have. I'm also thinking about like, how is he going to fit with Zach LaVine? How is he going to fit with, like, if we still have DeMar on this roster, like how is he going to fit with those guys where I think Caleb could fit in any lineup that we have and be an impactful part of it without impacting the play of others. I think he's more of a plug and play guy. And I know it's weird picking I think I agree with the concept of picking the best player. I do think that like in this scenario, if the Kings did take Darryn Peterson, I'd be okay with it at the end of the day. You walk away with the guy who's been talked about as like the number 1 player in this draft. And when he's under contract, you take the risk with those kind of things, if that's how the cards fall. But I wouldn't be, me personally, I would take a shot at Caleb. I like the competitive nature of this whole class seems to stand out in a way that like these guys just seem really bought in and they really want to win. And I think that's what like separates them kind of from what we've seen from Darryn, where it's felt like he's been playing a lot of defense whenever he's talking about himself, calling himself a loner, like things of that nature. He went on record and said, I'm kind of like a loner. And when you hear AJ, he's like, I'm ready to play 40 minutes. I'm ready to do everything it takes. Like he's building an entire brand. He's like, I want to be the number 1 pick type of thing. He understands the business side of things as well. Like you are the brand. And if AJ were to come to Sacramento or Caleb were to come to Sacramento, I think it would be a more natural fit from the personality standpoint. And even Boozer too. I think Boozer is, I think he's underappreciated and I think he's chill. His ceiling may not be as high as the other ones, but I think I think he'd be a capable player too, that I would, if I had to pick between him and Darryn, I would think about it just for what I believe he could bring in culture wise too. So this is an awesome class, but if you had to give me the choice 3v4 if we had picked 3, Darryn or Caleb, I would take Caleb. If it was Caleb versus AJ, I would take AJ.
So let me do this to you. Mm-hmm. Call me Vivek Ranadive. You cannot draft Caleb Wilson. I am not going to let you draft Caleb Wilson. Instead, I love my guards, so I'm going to give you the choice between Darryn Peterson or Kingston Flemings. And the reason that I say Kingston is I've listened to you for probably about a month straight now, pretty heavily a month straight, talk about Kingston Flemings. And you see the potential, you like the things you're seeing. I know, like, he's not on the level of a Darryn Peterson by any stretch necessarily. And when you look at the measurables, like, he falls short on a lot of it. But the way that he is kind of cooking throughout college ball this year, and he's put together some really solid games, even from like a defensive standpoint. I think he had like a couple games over 5 steals. If I was Vivek and I told you can't draft Caleb Wilson, but you can only take one of these 2 guards, does that change your opinion as far as drafting, say, Darryn Peterson?
I think if we were at 5, because I think that would be the only way we end up with Kingston is if we were picking 5th. But if it came down to those 2 at the 5 spot, I would take Darryn. I just think the value is too high there. I love Kingston, and I think that, if this was last year's draft, he'd be like the number 2 pick. And I think that Kingston reminds me so much of kind of what there's flashes of De'Aaron Fox in him, and like he's a Houston kid. He was a 4-star, but he earned his starting role here on a really good Houston team in a really tough conference in the Big 12 that features AJ and Darren and the guys from Arizona. Like, this is a really stacked conference this year. There's NBA talent littered in this Big 12 conference. And he stepped up to the plate in a lot of these big games. Now, Houston has lost 3 in a row, but AJ Dybansta is going through the same thing. Their program's lost like a lot of games recently. Darren went through, they've lost a few games there too in Kansas. So, these guys have had to go through some of their struggles with their teams. So Kingston has been that consistent driving force for him. And he has he's aggressive to the basket. He has a speed that gives you like, oh man, he has that burst that's like Fox in the open court. And he's fearless, and he can still get the ball out to his teammates, and he can score at all 3 levels. So I like everything Kingston brings to the table. And he's got, if we're saying like at 5, he may be the best player available. And that's when you say, hey, we will just get the point guard of the future, because he is a point guard. So it's not like a combo guard where you have to like lie to yourself and try to convince. Maybe even like Darren, it's like in the NBA, what's Darren really going to be? Is he going to be like an Anthony Edwards playing a 2, or is the team going to try and make him a 1? So that's going to be the battle that you would face with a Darryn Peterson, depending on the team. Kingston's just like, I'm a point guard. We need a point guard. So so that would be okay if we miss out on one of these high profile wing or forward guys that to take the best point guard in the draft. I think it would be can't miss with Kingston.
Yeah. And I mean, we can have this conversation all day about, who we'd pick at what and so on. The reality of it is, like, depending on how this thing shakes down, with how the ping pong balls drop and how this board lies at the end of it and going into the draft is really what's, we're not going to have any idea until we get an idea for the board. And as far as that's concerned, like the Kings right now, worst record in the NBA, stacked another loss. So we're keeping that alive. They would, if they retained the worst record, at worst, they would pick 5th. But here's the crappiest part about that, dude, is they have a 47.9% chance to get the 5th pick based on how the balls fall. They have a 12% to get the 4th, a 12.7 to get the 3rd, 13.4 to get the 2nd, and a 14% to get the number 1. Now, here's the other crappy part about it. Washington, or wherever the next 2 worst teams are by record, would have the same exact percent chance to get the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd pick, and even 4th pick as the Sacramento Kings. So this is keep in mind, this is also the last year that teams can kind of lean into this tanking thing without Adam Silver and the NBA kind of stepping in and eliminating that. So this is, based on how this board is going to shake down, that's how where we're going to kind of have a better idea of who's going to be available where. I really hope that the Kings take number 1, because with the number 1 pick, like if we had the number 1, I'd take AJ. Like I wouldn't even hesitate on that, because if it really did come down to those 2 guys, like it'd be hard for me to say, based on everything that I've seen from him, like attitude, play, that he's not the guy for the Sacramento Kings. But, time will tell. And right now, I want to put a scenario out to you. Okay. Now, this is kind of not really stealing it from Carmichael Dave in Sports 1140, but they had this conversation that I thought was rather interesting. And they brought a scenario to the table of if the Milwaukee Bucks were the 10th pick in the draft, if they approached the Sacramento Kings and said, we'll give you the 10th pick for Keegan Murray, pretty much straight up, they talked about if they'd do it. And I want to kind of bring that to the table and have that discussion with you, because, Keegan tonight got injured again. He twisted his ankle coming down, trying to make a play defensively. 5th injury of the season. So what did he have? A UCL to start the year, had surgery, was out, missed a ton of games, came back, had a back issue, was out, came back, had a calf issue, was out, came back, had an ankle, and now has an ankle again. Tough season for Keegan Murray, tough season for the Kings, but really tough season for Keegan Murray as well. Is it time to question if he's, this, that, or the other thing? I don't know about that, but I'm going to be honest, I'd give it a lot of thought, and then I'd probably say yes to trading Keegan Murray for that 10th pick because of this loaded draft. But I kind of want to get your opinion based on everything. We love Keegan. Keegan's great. That chant is amazing. The Keegan Murray chant. He's a fantastic guy in terms of like the energy he brings. He's a fun guy to be around. But based on the situation of the Kings, does it make the most sense if that opportunity came about for them to do that?
I think yes, I wouldn't hesitate. And not only is it just for the sake of, because I love Keegan, and I think what he brings to this team as a former 4th overall pick is just his ability to be a true 3-and-D guy, which is hard to find in this league, to be as consistent as he is. He's not as much of a 3-point shooter as he's been in the past, but I think that part of it's come with that finger injury. Part of it's just come with the change in role and a lot of things. Con Knippel, to add more stuff to this season, broke his rookie record, so that didn't last, as long as we had hoped. But, what Keegan brings to the team is valuable. But, we did sign him to a max. A chance to get off that contract for the opportunity to bring in the 10th overall pick, as well as your own potential whatever pick, top 5 pick, that instantly gives you a pathway to get even younger, even though Keegan's one of your young pieces. He's 20, he's 20. No, I think he's older than that now. I think he's 25, 26. I think he's old.
He is 26.
Yeah, so because he came in as a junior, he was older anyway. So that's the thing. The Kings have been their rookies have been older, have been seniors and juniors. 25. Okay, so while that's still young, Jonathan Kuminga's 25 years old, and he's been in the league for 7+ years. So it's like being able to draft 2 dudes at 19 years old to that's a way to restart your organization. If no one wants Domas and no one wants Zach, you're going to have, you get to unload your 3rd biggest contract on the roster, and that provides you future flexibility. You're going to eventually move off of Domas and Zach, which will open up this whole plethora of hey, we got these 2 top 10 picks. We got whoever we're going to end up with in the next draft. And then we can offer money to whoever the hell we want. So that would be a reasonable pathway for us to move off of Keegan Murray. And the quality of this draft, the players that you can get in the late lottery in the 20s this year, there's dudes littered in this draft. And there's going to be I'm super high on this particular group of guys because the Kings will be able to find who they want in this draft at a position of need. Not because we have so many positions of need, but the ones we do have, this draft is good with them. So I'm really excited for if we got another opportunity even to just trade into the late 1st round, I'd be really happy to get as many picks from this draft as possible.
Yeah, I do agree. And it's tough because if you want to talk about the pillars, if we want to bring those up, Keegan does fill those pillars in almost every way. The tough part now is and I hate to do it, but you got to kind of question his availability, down the stretch. Is he hasn't been available in a season where it would have been really awesome to see what Keegan looked like as one of the main options on this team. It could have been a big jump year for him. So the other part of it too is rookie Keegan was fantastic, but he was in what was crazy enough a great situation where he didn't need to be the main guy. In fact, he was probably the 4th guy or 3rd guy at best on the court as an option pretty much at any given time. So people were leaving him open. People didn't have much tape on him. And in that system, that heavy dribble handoff that they were running through Sabonis, he benefited greatly from it. That's all gone now. That style of play is gone. That roster is gone. And we're left with a Keegan Murray that we were hoping going into year 2 and 3 would take a leap. And instead it's been a regression in a lot of ways. So now you got to kind of question is are we trying to force Keegan to be something he's not? And are we setting higher standards for a guy that maybe won't never hit those standards? Like, he could very well be like a 3-and-D player and that's it. And like doesn't check any other box. But that's valuable around the league. And that's where, like, when you look at the rest of this roster with the terrible contracts with, Domantas Sabonis and Zach LaVine, with the pretty much immovable vet of DeMar DeRozan and some of these other guys, like, in a lot of ways, he's the guy who brings you the best return right now. And if somebody comes to the table and says, we're going to give you pretty much an opportunity to get another young guy in the building, get another, potential draft pick or potential future part of your team, I think you got to do it. I don't think you do hesitate if you're Scott Perry, because if this season's kind of showed you enough, I don't think there is a single really untouchable player on this team. Like, based on the reports we heard early on, like, Keon was untouchable, and now he's gone, and he's thriving out in Cleveland. And when Scott Perry signed Dennis Schroeder, like, he was talking about Dennis, like he was this, going to be a big thing going forward. 3-year deal, gone. So who's truly untouchable on this team for the right deal? I don't think a single person is. So
yeah. No, I agree with that. Now, when it comes to the fact, like, okay, let's say they don't move on from Keegan, we get a top 5 pick. I'm still confident that, he's still going to be a reliable piece, and he'll have the opportunity to show that he is the guy. And it'll be interesting to see kind of how Keegan gets moving forward, an off season of just focusing on his health, hopefully, and just getting back into, being 100% and just ready for next year. And that's been the case with all of our guys. I mean, we lost Domas, we lost Zach, we lost DeAndre Hunter, and, it's just, we got DeMar and Russ and the other guys, and that's just how it's been. Maxime Reynaud's shown some nice, pieces. We obviously know what Dylan Cardwell was, but he got hurt and he's going to be missing basically another few weeks at the minimum. And then we obviously have Neek, and I don't know if Devin Carter's going to find a place here in Sacramento. I think it's been an up and down experience, and I think that if we end up being in that position in the draft to take a guard, we will take that guard. And not really think twice about it. And we're getting some good Daquan Plowden minutes, and that's sad that, he's a name that we have to be bringing up right now as someone getting consistent minutes for the Sacramento Kings. So that is kind of the state of the Kings. And it sucks because we're still watching games where Russ and DeMar are, like, taking every shot. I think DeMar has been a lot better with it, but Russ has kind of turned the tables on us, and we were sitting there praising him at his leadership and stuff, but he's still going to jack up, get his stats here before he moves on, to another team next year. But either way, I think that you add the top 5 pick and then potentially get a nice piece or two. Maybe you're able to move off of Domas and LaVine and get a piece in return. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, where we are right now is kind of a sad place. I mean, it's literally the worst season in franchise history. It's trending that way. They could go on like an 8-game win streak and somehow make it the second worst. But I mean, I doubt they will either. But here's another thing I wanted to ask you, because you had brought this up earlier today. You had said, I don't care if Doug Christie's here or not, and I wanted to get. We kind of had this conversation a little bit of like, oh, would we be okay with, him starting with a number 1 pick? I wonder. I'll ask you again, I guess, in this sense. It's like, I'm indifferent towards it, because I don't think that if we all of a sudden insert whatever coach is available, unless there's if there's a can't miss head coach out there that actually wants to coach the Sacramento Kings, sure, come on down. But I don't think there's anyone coming coach wise to save to save our team. So Doug is under contract. He has a 3-year option. He is under contract through next year, and then the team has an option to sign him for that 3rd year. At that point, I just say, screw it, let him ride out next year. The guys like him. He can build a defensive-ish culture, teach these guys a thing or two because he's an experienced defender who, can get what we want with maybe some of these guys leaving the roster next year. Maybe they get to play his way, try a little harder, right? But we're not going to be good next year either. Even with AJ, we're not going to be a play-in playoff team all of a sudden unless we infuse some more talent, right? But then the question becomes, why not just keep Doug, let it ride out, and then bring someone else in to launch the future after we potentially move off of Domas and Zach? What do you think about that?
I think you're not wrong. Like, to feel indifferent about it, like, it makes sense. Like, when you think about it, like, he's got the 3-year deal. My thing is, like, when you know somebody's not a part of your future, why hold on to him is where I'm at. But the other part of it is, like, and you make a great point. For me, it's like, if you were to just fire Doug Christie, you're still paying Doug Christie. And what better option is out there? And do you feel that better option is somebody who you can move forward with, as your future? And that's kind of the question I think you got to ask yourself as the organization. It's like, it probably is the best option to keep Doug Christie. Now, I'm saying all this with all the love for Doug Christie, okay? I have all the love for Doug Christie. Sacramento legend, Kings legend. I mean, going back to that punch he threw on Rick Fox, dude's a freaking legend. I love Doug. I love his energy. And if there was a way to keep him on the staff in some way, shape, or form, I would happily welcome it. I don't know how he'd feel about it. But I really do love Doug. It's just, he's not quite head coach material in the NBA, is kind of what I'm getting. In my opinion, I think this has been an absolute disaster of a season. You've had injuries up and down. You've had crazy stuff happen. But to be this bad with this many veterans and to be this kind of incohesive, like, it makes me ask questions about the leadership, not just from a player standpoint, but from a coaching standpoint. That's like, how would I feel if we got our guy, AJ Dybansta, or insert whoever your name is, and he doesn't have necessarily the right coach, or he already has one coach and now he's going into year, 2 or 3 with a new coach type thing. I don't like that idea, but it's probably something we're going to have to face. So
I think the only way we can entice a coach to come here that isn't Doug is if we get number one, and it is AJ, and we're like, hey, who wants to come coach AJ Dybansta? Who wants to be the guy to launch his career and make him the number one pick, or even Darryn Peterson or whoever? I think if we're top 2 pick, we can maybe have that conversation about it. At least I would think. But yeah, it's just a weird spot to be in. I agree, though. Us as fans, we do deserve better than a team who's getting the benefit of the doubt from media and the league for we're the best tanking team in the league this year, and we're getting zero credit for it. It's just like, we're bad, even though we have been intentionally tanking for what has been a few months now, and we're not getting fined. We're not on anyone's agendas. We're the Sacramento Kings, and we're just bad.
Well, and you know why? It's because everybody called that. Everyone knew the Kings weren't going to be good this year. I don't think people necessarily knew that they were going to be this bad, but when they quickly caught on to how bad the Kings were, it was just, at that point, it was known that the Kings are bad, and nobody cares that the Kings are bad because they've been mid or bad for the better part of 20 years now. So, like, yeah, I think because of just the consistency of this organization and where it's at most of the time, that's where the out is. It's like, you look at the other teams who are bad. I mean, you look at like a Washington, and it's like, yeah, they're pretty bad outside of like the John Wall, Bradley Beal years, and even those were like good, pretty good, but not great. I don't know. Like, you look at some of the other teams, and it's like, yeah, you can make a case for it, but some of the ways that these other teams are tanking, it looks a lot more egregious than that of like the Kings. The Kings go out there, they genuinely throw these veterans out there, and sometimes DeMar and Russ just shoot us out of a win when we do have it if we just kept the young guys. Like we've seen that countless times. And that kind of does bring me to one last thing on Doug. Like some of the lineups to close these games and the lineups in general, but like especially to close these games, valuable minutes for these young guys. I'm like, bro, why do you not have these guys out here? And like you had Devin Carter, you played him for like, you know, like a 7-game stretch, I'm going to call it. And now he's shelved again. Where is DC? So it's like, it's weird, man. Like I don't agree with the lineups that Doug has. I didn't agree with a lot of the lineups that Mike Brown had either. I didn't agree with the Keon Ellis minutes. You know, don't get me wrong. He wasn't perfect either, but like, I don't know. I just feel like you don't have anything to lose running these young guys out here and benching the vets, and we're just seeing the vets continue to be pushed out on the court, and it's kind of tough and it's kind of getting boring. But yeah, I mean that's kind of where I'm at, like with the whole thing. Yeah.
So, how confident are you in some of these young guys? I just kind of want like your take on, you know, do you truly believe that a guy like Maxime, you know, Neek, Dylan, do you think that these guys are going to stick like long term in the next 5 years? We'll have all these guys on the roster. Maybe we sign them all.
We'll have one of them at least. I could see 2 of them. I don't think it's likely we keep all 3. Just considering how much this roster is going to be in constant flux over the next 5 years or so. But when I look at Neek, like I see a solid future role player, like a really solid future role player. I look at Maxime Reynaud and I'm like, yeah, this is a guy who can easily be a center and starting center in the league. And this is a guy who can also impact the game in a lot of different ways. I mean, he works on that 3-ball just a little bit more, and he's able to extend the perimeter like he can, and he gets that respect. He's going to be super dangerous, not just by himself, but in lineups with these guys who can space floors and be athletic. So like that's valuable. Dylan Cardwell, like he could be a 6-man, you know, not necessarily like a 6-man, but like he could be the guy to come off the bench and be another spark plug. He could be like a Serge Ibaka in a lot of ways, where he finds himself in a starting lineup with a certain team, but for the rest of it, like, you know, he's just a solid defensive presence off the bench and a guy who gives you these really good, energetic minutes. So like, I love the future of a lot of these guys. Like, and I do feel like they have solid NBA futures ahead of them. I just want to see a little bit more of them. I want to see it. Please, Doug, leave them in to close these games. Be the reason why they lose the game. Be the reason why they win a game. Like, these are the things that are so valuable to these young guys. It's irreplaceable, these seasons like that, to be able to throw these young guys in and let them learn at the fire sometimes.
And the hard part about it is that beginning of next year, we're going to run into the same issue again, where the veterans are still here. It's Domas and Zach and Keegan, and those are going to be the guys getting the shots, and Maxime and Neek, and then you still have Malik. Like, you have guys who need to create shots, and it's just when your priority to start the season when you're 0-0 is like, we're going to give it everything we have, those young guys take a back seat. And then and especially if we get the number 1 pick, where do these guys who we currently have now fit into the future? And that's going to be an interesting part for the Sacramento Kings. But I do think, you know, like you did, I agree with what you said, that it is going to be hard to keep all 3. Just realistically, and, you know, one of these guys might be a trade chip, like things like that. So, but I think it's an interesting conversation because they're going to be introduced to this top 5 pick coming into the building next year. And it's just another role that needs to get adjusted to, and that role is the same thing with Zach LaVine and Domas. Like, it's just this team has still some parts it needs to get rid of, and that's where we're at with the Sacramento Kings. We're just patiently waiting for the season to come to a close, hoping for a win or 2 more without passing the Indiana Pacers. But given our luck and the percentage, you know, that was the other thing about the lottery odds. Since they've gotten flattened, which was in 2019, not a single team that's gotten the worst overall record has gotten the number 1 pick yet. So, you know, we cannot just sit here and act like, oh, we got the worst record. We're guaranteed, we're golden. Like, we are more likely, was literally like Ben just said, we are most likely to get the 5th overall pick here. So that is a scary scenario to live in. And, you know, even that is less of a guarantee than getting the number 1 pick. So that's it. The Kings are in a weird spot.
Well, and I just just Googled this because I was curious. You know, the Kings right now have the 29th easiest remaining schedule for strength of schedule left. So like there's a real chance they string together some wins here and potentially pass up like the Pacers or find somebody else. Like if I quickly look, Washington has the 4th hardest remaining schedule. Indiana's got the 6th hardest remaining schedule. Like both these teams got to see OKC again. They both got to see Detroit 2 more times. Like there's a real chance that the Kings don't have the best odds at the top 5 picks, you know, by the end of this thing. So, I mean, we'll see how this shakes down, but I thought that was interesting.
No, that's a great point. And honestly, at the end of the day, I think in the spirit of it all, it is more important to win. And I think that if these guys can find a way to generate another win streak of some kind, even if it's a 2-3 game win streak, that's just going to be so beneficial for them to, you know, establish winning habits again, because that losing streak was getting pretty brutal. And I think that, you know, based off the numbers, our odds are stacked against us anyway, whether we're the worst record or not. So might as well just give it everything we have in these last stretch with the young guys, let them fail on their own. And if we luck out into the number 1 pick, great. We're probably going to get the 2nd pick and have to relive, you know, Marvin Bagley night terrors again and, you know, have to figure all that out. Did we miss out on the prospect, all this and that? And that's the conversation. That's the life of a Kings fan, my friend. So before we head out here, did you have any other final thoughts on this team? Any other topics you wanted to touch on?
While this has been the worst Sacramento Kings season I have ever watched, I do still love this team. And like every night, dude, I look up to the sky and I'm like, please give me the number 1 pick. Please. Please just land us the number 1 pick in Sacramento. Because if they can get that, dude, like, this changes everything. Yeah. This really does change everything in terms of like how we feel going into next year. Yeah, we'll be bad, but to know you have like a franchise player, the guy, any of the guys that you truly feel is best on the table at that point, that's going to mean everything. And that's going to give something that this city has to rally around. And I'm just hoping for that, dude. Like if it's not number 1, give me a top 2 or 3. And I think we're going to be golden.
Yeah, we're in a good of spot as any to be bad this year. And next year, you know, we'll given the opportunity, we'll probably be bad again, and we'll be able to add one more young talent in the top 10 and try and go from there. I mean, we're seeing teams like the Hornets, we're seeing teams like the Blazers, you know, teams who had their rebuild phase finally start to reap some of these benefits of multiple years of draft picks. And that's the model we have to take, even if the NBA is going to go to try and deter things in different ways. I still think the Kings are going to be bad enough next year where we'll still get that pick naturally and fairly. So I did have one other final thought. I'm really excited for March Madness because the Kings have been, you know, not as entertaining this year. I've gravitated, and not to mention Arizona's number, you know, has been in the top 5 all year. So I've been more engaged on college basketball. And what a year with these prospects. And, you know, the Arizona being in the Big 12, I'm watching AJ and Darren and Kingston and all these dudes just in here. I'm like, this is awesome. And there's been great matchups all year long. And this tournament's going to be more hype than ever. And I am beyond excited. And obviously you and I are going to do a bracket thing, but I just kind of wanted to set the stage because, you know, this March Madness is going to affect narratives. It's going to be this is going to be the most impactful March Madness for an NBA draft, and I think this is going to be one of the most watched NCAA tourneys in years.
I fully agree with you, and because of that, I'm going to say this has the most chance in recent memory, at least in my opinion, to heavily impact the kind of the mock draft situation and where guys are projected to be. Because, like, we just talked about Kingston Fleming. He's on, while his team's on that streak right now and not doing well, like he's on a cooler as well. Like he's dropped below like 40% field goal rate. So like there are guys cooling off. There are guys heating up going into this tournament. Like there's a lot of room for movement. And with all these teams right now, with all these bad records in the NBA, all these teams looking at all these different guys, like, you know, who's the best option for me? There's going to be so many eyes on this tournament. Nationwide, like it's going to be wild, the implications of this tournament. And I agree with you. Like this is it is that part of this whole tanking thing makes it worth it, because that makes March Madness and college basketball mean that much more if you're someone like me who doesn't necessarily follow it deeply, doesn't have a team. Like, it's really cool. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge experience, and that's this March Madness in general. It's going to be star matchup on star matchup. There's NBA talent littered in this draft, and I'm so excited for what's to come. And the Big 12, Arizona, like there's gonna feature like 6-7 teams, from that conference, and it'll be great to just see all these guys get a chance to prove what they got. And hopefully for Arizona, being an Arizona fan, hopefully they finally able to at least get into the freaking Final Four. It's been a very long time. So you and I will obviously start digging more into that here in the coming weeks, but next week, stay tuned. We're going to be talking about some of our picks that we had made during the last football season, some of these predictions that we had before we embarrass ourselves next season and make some predictions that are bold and will inevitably fail. But we'll take a look at some of our highlights and our lowlights, because we definitely hit on a few things in there. So it'll be fun to review and see where we went wrong, and kind of laugh at ourselves here as we relive what was an interesting NFL season as well. So stay tuned for that, guys. So with that being said, I think we got everything we needed to here. Do you have any final thoughts, Benny? All right. This was episode 121 of the Behind the Back podcast. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com for all you guys watching on YouTube. All of our social media descriptions are up above. For all you audio listeners out there, the links to descriptions are down below. Please give us a like, subscribe, rate, review, and follow the show. We appreciate all your love and support. Stay tuned, you guys. For all you Kings fans out there, let us know who you want on this team. Where would, obviously we want the number 1 draft pick. So if you had the number 1 draft pick, who would you bring to Sacramento? And who are you guys rooting for in March Madness? Who are you guys paying the most attention to? So my name is Marcos Conan-Negron. Beside me here, as always, is
Ben the Jet Reds.
We love y'all. We will talk to you next week. Peace.